Hello, everyone. I'm Evan Doran with Modern Machine Shop, and I'll be your moderator today. Today's webinar, How Harvey Performance Boosts Schedule Attainment with Real-Time Machine Data, will be presented by George Burleson, Director of Manufacturing Analytics and Process Engineering at Harvey Performance, Duggan Henderson-Begg, Plant General Manager at Harvey Performance, and Graham Immerman, Chief Commercial Officer at MachineMetrics. In this webinar, they will discuss how Harvey Performance doubled schedule attainment after integrating production data with MachineMetrics manufacturing execution system software. If you have questions for our presenters, please use the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. As a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing shortly after today's session. With that, I'll turn it over to our presenters. Take it away.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Evan. And welcome Modern Machine Shop viewers, listeners to our webinar today featuring Harvey Performance. As Evan mentioned, my name is Graham Immerman. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at MachineMetrics. It's been a hot minute since I've been hosting a webinar, but it's nice to be back with Modern Machine Shop. Been doing this for almost a decade now, so always great to be here with you all. And we've got a lot of people, so we're grateful for that. Just like kicking things off, as we mentioned before, I've got two awesome presenters joining me today, Duggan and George. Give the audience a little wave, guys. I know that I know these guys well, but I think the audience will really enjoy what they've got to say on these topics. And I think we've got a really nice webinar well aligned for you guys. So thanks for joining us. Just to do like a quick review of the agenda, we're gonna obviously do a little product plug for MachineMetrics because that's what they pay me to do. And so we're gonna share a little bit about who we are and what we do, and the problem that we're solving, which we call the execution gap. And then I'm gonna let the gentleman from Harvey take things away. They're going to be talking about, how they're solving their execution gap, using tools like MachineMetrics. Then at the end, we'll share a little bit about what's coming next and open things up to Q&A. But just a reminder for those of you that are watching, yes, this webinar is being recorded, and the fine people at Modern Machine Shop will send out a recording to everybody after, so you can rewatch it at will and also share with your colleagues, friends, and family. I also added a link into the handouts area of the webinar where you can sign up for our big launch of Max AI, which I'll tell you a bit more about later in the webinar. But it's certainly not something that you're going to want to miss. So feel free to sign up through the link that we've provided there. And again, if you do have any questions during the webinar, we might not be able to answer them in real time. Some we will try to, but in the event that we can't, drop them in the Q&A section, and the team will moderate those and make sure that we get a chance to speak to them if and when the time makes sense. So, okay, without further ado, let's just dive in to our presentation. So we're here to talk about how manufacturers are solving challenges. And the biggest challenge that we see in the market today is that today's manufacturers are disconnected. For many of us, manufacturers have always been defined by our ability to plan, but challenged by our ability to execute on those plans. Many of us leverage tools like ERP systems that will, define these ideal production paths, like what to make, when to make it, and how much is it going to cost us, right? But when the work, is released, reality intervenes on the shop floor, right? Machines break down, setups run over, materials arrive late or aren't available, and the tribal knowledge that are in people's heads tends to override the system logic. Essentially, things go to hell in a handbasket when they hit the factory floor. And we know this gap, which we call the execution gap, is the biggest opportunity to solve in manufacturing to help us get product to our customers faster and more efficiently. And MachineMetrics is here to solve that problem, really. What's happening on the factory floor is typically defined by capturing data from your machines and processes. And so the way the MachineMetrics does that is we've connected real-time data from machines, and we've made this process incredibly easy. Essentially, you can connect to virtually any piece of discrete equipment on the factory floor, and we automate the labeling, mapping, and standardization of that data into a common model. So you can have essentially real-time data from the core of most of our manufacturing production facilities, which, because we're at Modern Machine Shop, right, is our machines. And we have tons of different makes, models, and controls of those, and it's irrelevant to us because we've gone really deep on this. We're probably the world leader in what we do when it comes to getting data from machines. And all of you have a number of different types on your factory floors, and we've made that part of the process really easy. Now, we know that the work doesn't just stop there. Many of you have secondary processes from assembly to quality checks to manual pressing and grinding and welding, right? And unless you're, essentially manufacturing a part that, essentially gets dropped into a box off your CNC machine, the work doesn't just stop at the end of the machining process, right? And if you want to know when it's time to get your work to a customer on time, then you need to track the entirety of that process. And this is where many machine monitoring softwares in the past have essentially fallen short. And so with MachineMetrics, we've also added the ability to track any process. So you can not only calculate an estimated completion time for your machining operation, but we pull in that same real-time information on your secondary processes and assembly processes. So you can see exactly where your part operations and work orders stand within the entirety of your manufacturing process. And you can know exactly when those work orders are going to be delivered on time, using that real-time information to make adjustments so we can get more product out the door faster and more efficiently. The last piece of that puzzle is, well, we're running our machines, we're running our processes, but what the hell are we running? What are we making and for who, right? We talked about the execution gap, right? And this is where software of the past has really gotten stuck, and MachineMetrics has made it really easy to solve. And so while making that really easy, it's really freaking hard problem to solve. And so what we did is we went very deep to build out ERP integrations that are not just pulling data, but allow our customers to push data back into ERP systems like Epicor, InfoVisual, XA, Sightline, Plex, SAP, ProShop, Global Shop. I could MSD 365. There's so many different ones out there, and so we've had to go really deep in understanding the ERP system itself, because this is where all of us really conduct the center of our businesses and the part of the business that's disconnected from the factory floor. And in order to understand what's happening in our factory floors, we now need to know not just what's going on in our machines, right? But we need to know what we expected to do and what's happening in our ERP system. And once you're able to connect these two data streams, right, we unlock a tremendous amount of value where we're not just monitoring our machines, but we're monitoring production itself. And with those two key elements of information, we deliver what we call the core 4 MES capabilities, which are the ability to track downtime, OE and production analytics, dispatch and schedule work that is dispatched from the ERP on the factory floor, and then bi-directionally integrate that real-time information so operators can then enter that data back into the ERP, and we can make that that system, which is again the center of our business, far smarter and more capable than ever before. And with that, you guys have heard more than enough about me and MachineMetrics. If you want, you can always reach out to us on the side, but we're really here more to talk about the guys at Harvey. And so I've got George and Doug in here, and I'm going to hand the mic to them so they can share their story.
Thanks, Graham, and thanks to everyone joining us today. I'm George Burleson from Harvey Performance Company, and I help to lead digital transformation efforts in our manufacturing organization. I'm really excited to share our story today, not just about connecting machines or dashboards, but really connecting people, data, and execution in a way that strengthens how we serve our customers every single day. At Harvey Performance, we like to say that we make tools that make things possible. And that phrase means a lot to us because what we do doesn't end with a cutting tool leaving our factory. It's about what our customers go on to make with it. And these are the things that shape the physical world around us. Our tools are used to help make spacecraft, airplanes, and satellites, medical implants, precision components and power generation, electronics, and countless other things that most people will never even realize trace back to the metalworking industry and to the tools that we manufacture. And it's a point of pride for everyone on our team. We make the tools that make things possible. Really who we are. It's Harvey Performance designs, manufactures, and sells some of the most respected brands in the industrial cutting tool space. Names many of you on this Modern Machine Shop webinar probably know and use: Harvey Tool, Helical Solutions, Micro 100, Valor Hole Making, to name a few in North America. And across these brands, we're known for exceptional quality, a massive breadth of offering, and a level of service that sets the standard in our industry. Our promise to the market is simple. When you need a tool, you can get it fast, and you can trust that it's quality, and you can depend on our support. That promise is powered by one of the most comprehensive stocked product portfolios in the world. We offer tens of thousands of unique SKUs, tools of every imaginable diameter, length, coating, and geometry, all ready to ship right off the shelf. And that service, that ability to have exactly what a customer needs when they need it, is truly unmatched in our industry. But it's also really, really hard to pull off, because behind that promise is one of the most complex manufacturing and supply challenges that you'll find anywhere. And our supply challenge, how do you manufacture and stock the optimal quantity of tens of thousands of products, each with its own unique geometry, coding, demand pattern, and again, do it while maintaining world-class service levels? It's really not a simple inventory problem. It's a question of how well you plan, how efficiently you can execute, and how flexible your manufacturing system is when your priorities do shift. It comes down to your supply chain's ability to react to reality and to make what you plan to make when you said you'd make it. And that's where the concept of schedule attainment for us becomes so powerful. Schedule attainment, simply put, measures how well we're executing against the plan. Are we completing the jobs that we said we'd complete this week, this month? It's a leading indicator of our on-time delivery as well, which for us is at the very heart of the service we provide to our customers. That brings me to the Meridian story here. So I'll bring this to life with an example. At our Meridian, Idaho facility, we produce an incredible variety of cutting tools, from micro tools the size of a human hair follicle up to cutters several inches in diameter and over a foot long. And that kind of range requires not only specialized equipment, but also specialized people, experts in grinding, inspection, and coating and packaging, all working together to deliver that precision day after day. And leading that team is Duggan, who's on the line with us here today. And he and his team can make it all, and they do. But with that flexibility comes an enormous challenge. How do you efficiently schedule that kind of variety? How do you keep on-time delivery high, minimize setup hours, and stay nimble enough to handle the constant flow of high mix, low volume work that's characteristic of our business? And that's the exact challenge that we were facing in Meridian and across our company, and that's what led us down the path we're talking about today. And the problem we were running into is exactly what Graham described earlier: is the execution gap. We had a solid ERP system. We had a well thought out production plan generated from the data, but our visibility into what was actually happening on the floor lagged behind that reality. The data going into the ERP was manually collected and often entered every 8 to 10 hours from shared terminals. It wasn't real time, and it wasn't always complete or accurate. And our scheduling logic was built on these estimates and not actuals. So even though we had a plan, we couldn't always tell whether we were on track or not until after the fact. By the time we realized we were off schedule, it was usually too late to recover. And if you can't react quickly, you can't protect delivery performance. It's plain and simple. And that gap between plan and reality, between the system and the shop floor, was costing us valuable time and insight. So like many companies, we started experimenting. We knew we needed something better. So we had evaluated a few machine monitoring and MES providers. We even tried a DIY approach, building our own machine data collection system and linking it to our ERP system. And again, the goal there wasn't just to see, are the machines on or off? It was to connect machine data to job context so we could measure performance to standard in real time. And while we learned a lot from this approach, it was very difficult to maintain. Getting a stable connection across multiple machine platforms was difficult enough. Normalizing that data into a consistent format, even harder. And then adding the complexity of tying that data to job level ERP data to machine data in real time, it quickly became a full-time software project. Now we could definitely see the potential in it. We just didn't see a path to be able to scale it across an entire plant, let alone multiple facilities. So at that point, it became clear that to move forward, we need a strong partner and someone focused on building the kind of MES infrastructure that would let us focus on manufacturing, not middleware. And so that's when we really found our way back to MachineMetrics. Graham and I, we've got quite a long history. We had met before, but really when we reconnected at IMTS last year, the conversation really changed our trajectory. And Graham, showing us the ERP connector, I immediately saw power in that idea and, trying to build this ourselves. Allowed us to make sure that the job data and the machine data could live in the same real-time context. And then I saw how easy it was to connect a machine, literally just a few clicks, type in an IP address, and how clearly the interface tied in with the ERP job information. And that was really the light bulb moment for us. We realized that we didn't need to build this all from scratch. We just needed the right platform and one that could bring our ERP, our machines, and our people together in a single real-time loop. That kind of brings me into a little bit of the results and what we like. And I'm going to let Duggan take this part because he and his team have been living it really day to day on the floor.
Hey, thanks, George. So I'll talk a little bit about the implementation and what we tried to achieve here. I'm sure many people on the call here today have many measurements about how they measure their plant and how it performs, whether they're measuring OEE or whether they're measuring productivity, pieces, hours, whatever it is. And so the key was to be able to bring all of that together and get that visibility and really understand what was going on in our plant. So as Graham said earlier, it's very simple to implement. What was super important to us was to be able to work within our IT infrastructure and the security protocols that all of us are having to put in place these days to protect our businesses. And so this being a cloud-based solution, wanted to make sure that we could still maintain the security we needed. As we implemented it, connecting the machines through that process was very simple. We implemented tablets on every individual machine that had the MachineMetrics user interface on it. And so it was super easy to get that up and started. And our initial, caution was to make sure that we could get what we wanted from it. We really wanted to focus on schedule attainment. And so we started with 5 machines. We have approximately 35 total CNC machines in the facility. So we started on 5 machines across various processes in our value stream, starting with primary operations or prep work, finish grind with low volume, and then finish grind with high volume, just to really understand, hey, what can this do, and will the operators adopt it, and things like that. So we'd been already working on an intelligent machine schedule. So a big part of it was being able to load that schedule into the process and be able to have our operators see that, and paying attention to how the employee engagement would be. Currently, they were using standalone computers in various places in the shop. So they were having to walk and go and do their MES labor transactions, so this gave us the capability of getting them, directly to the machine and doing that without having to walk away. So that was super helpful.
And then obviously we wanted to pay attention to stuff that was going on with our supervisors. That was a big part. We got labor balances and reconciliation that we wanted to limit. And we were seeing a lot of miscounts or miscategorizations of scrap and things like that. So we wanted to make sure that we had the capability to get the adoption through the employees, get better data, and a big part of this being the live data. So if you go to the next slide, please. So we're an Epicor ERP shop. We typically use that for all of our manufacturing data connections. So it was super important to be able to integrate with that. And again, they made that super easy for us. We needed to be able to load the machine schedule that we were doing external, or rather in Epicor, but external to MachineMetrics, and make sure that the employees could see what that schedule was going to be. So we have the Epicor. We needed that production intelligence, which is, the MES side of things at the machine, connecting the machine. The connectivity gives us the ability to see the number of parts being manufactured, issues within the machine. So you're really getting that live data that is super important to any manufacturer to really what's going on. In the past, all of that data was coming to us at a later date, and then we'd be, past the situation, we could go and fix it. And then obviously that data had to then get into our ERP, had to get back in there. We needed the labor tickets getting in there for our costing and everything that went along there. And then ensuring that we're managing the process there. The big part here was just having that live data. As I said, we can tell when a machine was stopped, whether it was in setup, whether it was running in production, and then key features that we could then start seeing, such as rapid overrides, machine alarms, and of course, how well we were performing to our routers and standards that we had in our system. On to the next slide there, please, Graham.
Yeah, before I go on, I couldn't help but notice that quote on the bottom corner there. I thought that was really interesting. Just out of curiosity, Duggan, how long did the team used to spend editing labor tickets? I know it's a challenge for a lot of our customers.
Yeah, our supervisors could spend between an hour and 2 hours going through some of the labor tickets from the previous day. And specifically, one of the biggest challenges we had was lights out running when, we've all gone home and the machines are still running. We do a lot of that. And so that was very difficult to go back in and adjust what time it really finished. The operators were clocking out at 5 a.m. when they came in, and that wasn't true form. So we had to go back and make that adjustment to when we believed the machine finished that cycle. So yeah, a lot of time being saved by being able to remove that.
That's cool. Forgive me. I'm on to the next slide.
Yeah, no worries. So our desire was schedule attainment. That's really where we were focusing our efforts on this. A lot of other people we've heard of use different metrics to be looking at, but to have schedule attainment, you've got to have an attainable schedule. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but obviously you've got to be able to put an attainable schedule out there. And what we were seeing as we went through sort of root cause countermeasures and actions, trying to understand what was going on, that the inaccuracies within our routed standards were driving a lot of inaccuracies, therefore, in our schedule. If a job was scheduled to run for 5 hours, but the router said it was going to run for 3, obviously that was going to put us off and we wouldn't maintain schedule. So as we went through this and dug deep into the root cause issue, our number one challenge was our routers being correct and the machines running to whatever was routed in the method or the standard. So we really kind of looked at that. That's the area that we really wanted to focus on. The dashboards that are available, from the box effectively gave us the ability to have a dashboard up in the engineering department. And if a cycle time was much longer, and we had some different standards for different machines, but if the cycle time was longer than we had routed or put in the method, we were able to go down live right now while it's running and go see what's going on. And in many cases, the operator had slowed it down because he believed that was the best thing to do to make the tool and, not hurt the grinding wheels or whatever it might be. So, and many times the engineer being able to go to the machine was saying, hey, no, let's speed it up. Let's get it back to where it needs to be. In other cases, it was, okay, yeah, you are running it where it needs to be and our standard is wrong. So, let's go back in, correct our standard, obviously, therefore correcting our costing and getting us to be much more accurate in what we're producing. So again, that real-time data is key to really getting the root cause countermeasures put in place and driving those actions. And it's come for education, right? It helped us understand that maybe some of our operators weren't as familiar with cutting speeds and data that we needed to. So helped us identify areas for us to progress and improve in what we were trying to do. Excuse me. So again, it's all about the live data. In the past, we'd see that a job ran slow. We'd go see an operator 2 days later and say, hey, what was wrong with that job? Why did it run so slow? So I don't know. I've slept since then, sort of thing. So really trying to get there on time as it's going. And the same thing is for the supervisors. If a machine's being down for 50 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever your standard is, you're going up and asking, hey, what's going on? It's the action-driven data that you're getting to be able to go ask questions. Hey, this setup went 2 hours. It was only meant to be an hour. Why are we taking so long? And learning and questioning your employees to, how do we train you better for that setup to be more efficient, things like that. So it's really been an eye-opener and a communication starter for us to really drive our schedules in the right direction. And therefore, by improving our schedules, we've improved our output, improved our uptime, and truly the capabilities of the facility.
I love that one thing you said there about unearthing education opportunities for operators. And I think this is something that I do think it's like an unheralded value of these types of technologies, that you often see real-time information coming in and then you ask questions and you realize that it's just literally, we just need to have more communication between our team members so they understand things better. And I think in the past, sort of this technology sometimes is sort of seen as like a big brother almost, like, but in reality, right, what it shows is gaps, and we're not getting there without our frontline workers, right? So we need them to be in the loop and knowing where they have those gaps so we can address that and make them stronger. So I think that's a really great, really, really cool insight.
Yeah, it's been super interesting as we've done that. So I guess, what we really liked, some of the things I've already covered, the employee interface is super, super easy if people have been using, in our case, Epicor MES to load the labor transactions and labor records into the system. Then this is very simple. You get a screen, as you can see on the bottom right there, confirm work produced as you commit to the job being complete or you're finishing your shift. You just tell them how many pieces you've made. That number should already be there because the machine's counting it for you. So it tells you already. You're just confirming that, yes, that's what you've got. Or if you've found you've got a couple of pieces of scrap, you can put that in at that point and define it. What's really helpful for me as an operations leader is to get some additional comments back. So that's super easy right there for them to do. And then they're closing out the setup, or they're closing out the production run, or just dropping it out of their operator to move to the next operator. So the user interface was super easy. The guys picked up on it so quickly. And then, their big part of it was being able to not have to walk away from their machine while they're doing that and having to go to a separate unit. And then by the time they get there, they've stopped to talk to Joe and they've forgotten how many pieces they made or how many scrap or what the reason code was. So live data being put in right there at the machine and getting through things. And then the one thing that I really liked, again, as an operational leader, is having that multi-level downtime or scrap or note capability that allows me now to take that data, Pareto it, really look into the different levels of issues, identify the biggest problem we're having or the biggest challenge that they're seeing, and being able to take actions to drive it. It's, as I said before, any data that we get needs to be data-driven or data-driving change in your facility. So super important in that respect. Then on to the last slide for me.
Yep. Click that.
So yeah, our focus again was the schedule attainment. So it's all about visibility, tied us to a better understanding of our schedule. We had rules that we put in place to try and eliminate setups as best we possibly can, as any manufacturer is trying to do. It gave us the visibility and communication tools with the guys and team in the shop to understand whether our logic was correct. And we gave them a little bit of, with this, we gave them a little bit of empowerment, I guess, to make some small changes, with a little bit of supervisor support. They could say, hey, look, I can see that next job coming up, or that job 5 jobs down. It's going to be a quicker setup if I do this one and get it out of the way. Or, hey, if I move this job here, it'll run through lights out rather than stopping in the middle of lights out. So we have been able to give our team a little bit of visibility to the schedule ahead, understanding what that's going to do for later operations potentially, and be able to make some changes. So our focus there is hitting our schedule attainment. Our schedule attainment is measured on how many jobs we schedule for the week and how many did we get done on that specific machine or group of machines. So we're not so worried about did this job start and finish on time. It's did we complete it and did it match what the router said so we can maintain it. That gives us the attainable schedule. And then having that ability is just giving some empowerment to the team to feel like they're giving feedback and opportunities for us to improve our processes and capabilities and continue to drive improvements in our schedule process and logic. So it's been a super good improvement for us. We're really pleased with what we've seen and the goals that we've achieved.
That's beautiful. And you could see how tightly that ties to business revenue, right? I mean, when we're making decisions, right? I mean, we know essentially, when we're talking about when we get paid, it's like, well, the orders have to get out the door, right? And, we know exactly what all our orders are. We know the value of all these orders, right? And so by having that information, you can see how tying that right into that deeper ERP information can really help guide, core decision making. And I love to hear that your team is doing a good job empowering the front line. My biggest opinion is that I think there was a time where a lot of this technology in some ways was designed to call it like call out the front line. And I really think in many ways it should be done the opposite, where we need to empower the front line to be able to make strong decisions. And companies that do that, I find, are far more successful with software and technology like this.
Yeah, it's a super important point, the communication to the team about whether this is Big Brother watching or if this is really a tool for them to be helped is super important. And then to your point, we are, like I said, a build to stock environment, not a build to order environment. So being able to see that visibility of inventory and things like that within our schedule is super important to be able to prioritize to best satisfy customers. And hey, if we're satisfying customers, then hopefully it's bringing in the revenue behind it. So
that's what we're here. That's what we're here to do. And
right.
To that point, we did not pay anybody here to speak on behalf of MachineMetrics. So. That's awesome, Duggan. Thank you so much for those insights. They were amazing. And I know George. Obviously, we've known each other for a while now over the years, but you're even in some ways just even earlier on your MachineMetrics journey, and there's a lot more that we're planning together. I'd love for you to speak to a little bit about what that roadmap looks like.
Sure. Well, first, I mean, we're definitely looking to continue the success in Meridian and to deepen our capabilities and to advance there, and I'll touch on that in a second. But secondly, we're starting the evaluation process of scaling these baseline capabilities across other global manufacturing sites as well. So a lot of that's still in flight, but definitely excited to start that evaluation process. And in Meridian, we've seen significant improvement in schedule attainment, along with better insight into performance across the board. And looking ahead, really excited about what we see, coming down the pipe here. And we're focused on advanced functionality, things like the tool life tracking as it relates to wheel wear, to being able to tie that directly to our production data, looking at things like a maintenance integration, so downtime can trigger maintenance tasks automatically. We're looking into more advanced job tracking for lights out operations, and expanding beyond CNCs, including things like the manual stations or other pieces of equipment in our facility. And now that we're using MachineMetrics data to feed schedule updates back to the ERP, creating a closed loop system where our plan adjusts dynamically to what's happening on the floor, both on the execution side, but also in the planning. Leveraging the webhooks again to trigger alerts and automations to be able to allocate support efficiently and in a real-time manner. So when a machine event occurs, the right person knows about it instantly and can act on it. We're doing deeper analysis on cycle time standards, and we're getting to explore the max AI capabilities that MachineMetrics offers to help us to mine our production data and uncover patterns. Again, we want to use this to continue pushing and continue our continuous improvement initiatives, keep moving those forward. So, closing for us, this journey has been more about than implementing new technology. It's been about closing that loop between planning, execution, and improvement. And happy to say we're moving from a world of delayed data and reactive problem solving to one where we can see, understand, and act all in real time. And as we continue to expand and evolve the system, we're confident it's going to multiply our people's impact, empowering our operators, empowering our supervisors, and our entire team to deliver on the promise that defines our company, which is making tools to make things possible. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Graham.
Well, first of all, guys, amazing job. It's funny. It's like I've worked in MachineMetrics for 10 years, and there really is no silver bullet to solving these problems. It takes great partnership, and you guys have been just wonderful partners. George, and I hope George and Duggan would speak to this, but I think one of the things that part of a product company's responsibility is to hear the feedback from the customer and take that feedback and then use it to deliver solutions that only we can sort of solve, right? But part of that process is hearing the feedback and understanding it, and then being able to connect that to maybe not the first solution, but like the second or the third concept that comes from that. And by having that iterative process with great partners, right, it makes us so much stronger too. And so we really appreciate you guys and the continued feedback loop that we've been able to share over this journey together. And of course, that I've finally convinced George to get MachineMetrics and try over the years of our work together. But no, it's really been awesome, and you guys have been amazing advocates, and I'm super grateful for both of you to take your time here. And as George indicated, there is some really exciting stuff on the AI side that MachineMetrics is bringing to the table. And I'd be remiss not to share with the audience. We have a big webinar release coming up on November 12th. It's at 1 p.m. You can register now in the handouts or on the MachineMetrics website, or you've probably seen it promoted around LinkedIn. We're going to be releasing Max AI. For our customers, it's already out there, so this won't be a shock to them, but to the rest of the world. And we've essentially launched an intelligence layer on top of our MES that allows us to augment and automate the execution of manufacturing operations for our customer, leveraging digital agents. Today, we're just scratching the surface of what's possible, but being able to automate shift summaries for operators, being able to automate continuous improvement efforts, analytics to help make decisions, generate dashboards and reports with just simple natural language queries. These are just a taste of some of the things that are available and just at the tip of the iceberg for what's coming. And so I do urge you all to join us for that webinar. Not with Modern Machine Shop, but hopefully we'll get some coverage from them, because we love you guys, and thanks for that as always. And so we do have a lot. We have some time for questions. I personally like keeping the webinars short and sweet. And even though we've been about 40 minutes, we had more than enough content for today. If you have any questions, obviously link into George, link into Duggan. They're friendly. I'm sure they'll always answer questions. If you had any, they'll answer directly. Obviously, you can reach out to MachineMetrics, info@machinemetrics.com, or just go to the website, check out the stuff. Now, we've got a Q&A time, and I've got questions. I know we've got a moderator here, but I just have one I triple circled that you guys talked about, and I'd be really interested in just starting there, which was, you guys talked about bi-directional ERP integration. How critical do you feel like it is for an MES system to be bi-directional with an ERP? Is it prerequisite? Is it required?
I think if you're truly going to be working on live data, which is what we have to have as an operations manager, right? Things are moving fast all the time. So for me, it's critical to being able to see it. There's so many gaps we had before where we didn't have that data that we'd be making assumptions of or making decisions on that probably weren't right because it was after the fact. And just today, right, I've got a machine that was taking way too long to set up, and the guy was going backwards and forwards talking to him and finding out what we needed to do with helping him. And in that case, it was a case that he wasn't really that familiar with that type of tool, and he wasn't the best person to set it up. And so by moving him to another machine and having another operator get on there, we got that machine set up and back into production. So that bi-directional part, that live data, knowing exactly what's going on from the machine through the job they're running is, to me, is critical for us to be efficient in our decision making.
Awesome. Okay, great. I'm going to mix in some questions from the audience if you're okay with that. Unless, Evan, would you like to take that part on, or would you like me to moderate that?
Sure. I mean, it's whatever you're more comfortable with. I just want to throw out a reminder to everyone to use the Q&A box on the right side of your screen to submit any questions you have.
Awesome. Well, I figure I'll take the ones that we've got because we've got more than enough to get started with. Obviously, you guys have tried connecting machines. I mean, did you have any types of, this is from the audience, Jason, did you have any types of CNCs that you weren't able to interface with or thus far to get accurate part counts from?
I don't think so. I think every CNC that we had connected to, we were able to. I mean, we had a couple of our older PMC versions that we had to have some special differences for, but all in all, we did finally get all of them live and counting.
Yeah, part count is quite unique, right? Because obviously this is where the depth of just time put into this comes into play. But it's like you have some machines, right? They run like a cycle, and you get one part, 3 part, 4 part, right? So those levels of complexities require kind of honing in. And I think I don't know if you guys feel this way, but for me, it's like this is such a little bit of a learning process. I think that it's like, you can get sort of as out of the box as you can get. And then there's obviously configuration that's needed. So I guess to speak to one of the other questions from the audience, I mean, how configurable did you find the solution? What were you able to configure it to your needs? Were there any challenges with that part of the process?
I'd say absolutely. I can't think of any specific challenges, but anytime you have the technical integration between machines, softwares, IT stack, you're gonna have things that you're gonna have to solution for and customize for. And I would say that the support that we received from MachineMetrics when we did have things like that was phenomenal. And we quickly iterated through these things.
It's great to hear. Would you say like any top learnings, from the experience, anything that stood out to you for anybody who's going to be taking on a project like this in the upcoming year that, you can say, oh man, like if I did it again, I would totally do this, or like just something that stood out that you're like, hey, keep an eye on, this part. It might be MachineMetrics. It might be just literally like culture related. business, transformation related?
I would. I don't think it's a learning. It's just every OEM's different, right? So we have primarily 2 OEMs that we've been working with, and we've got great relationships with them. We can't make the assumption that every machine is the same. It's up to the OEM in the factory which bit they turn on or don't turn on, or whatever the case is. So it's being partnering between yourself with MachineMetrics and the OEM to ensure you're getting the piece of this data you want and whatever else that may be available from that OEM. Like I said, we got 2 different OEMs primarily in our plant, and each machine gives us different information that we can feed into MachineMetrics. One machine can give us wheel pack information, and we're working on how do we get in cut times and things like that. The OEM doesn't. But even going through that process, we found that this machine was turned on and this machine wasn't, or this machine's older and it doesn't quite have that capability, and this one's newer and it's got a little bit more. So don't assume that what you did on machine 1 is going to go to machine 2 and machine 3. You've got to be partnering between the 3 integrators to make sure that you're getting the best data you possibly can.
Boy, yeah, I hear that one. Someday Congress will pass a law that says, your data is your data, but we're not there yet.
Right.
And I would just add to that, I was just from an implementation's perspective, keep it simple. There's a lot of value in the baseline metrics, things around like if you're just hooking up your equipment for the first time, things like, is an active cycle in process, your utilization. Like there's a lot of value you can gain just from that. And that doesn't even require having an operator logging downtime and doing all these other, like we went for, we shot for the stars, ERP connection, all of the things together. And I think ultimately it was the right choice, but I think if I could go back and do it again, I think I would try to appreciate each stage kind of for what it is a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point, George. It's sort of like every company, could take this at a different rate, right? And it's like in the end, the goal is to get to fully integrated across every site, every machine, right? And there are different paths to get there, right? You go, cell by cell, site by site, right? You connect everything across all sites, right? Then you add in the next layer. I think there's a bunch of different ways to do it, and I think assessing your team and sort of like readiness, I think is and just which path works best for you. I think you're right. It's going to be really dependent on sort of where you are, but there's a lot of value in just having data itself from day one. Mm-hmm. What about like this is a question I got from somebody who sent me a direct one, but I think this will resonate with a lot of people. How do you pitch this to leadership? I know it's like the hardest thing. It's like we are going to save money by spending money. Like what would you provide as like recommendations or as your approach to helping leadership say, oh man, this is a really good idea. I should do this.
Yeah, that's a great question. Air your dirty laundry. That was probably the hardest thing for me. Meridian, Idaho is in the middle of nowhere, and I don't get very many visitors. So, we knew our routers were going to be off. We knew there were other issues that we could deal with. We were measuring downtime or productivity or utilization the best we possibly could, and so had to accept that going through this process we're going to see some inaccuracies, and I think that was the sale on my side was to spend money to identify the objects and issues within your processes that then you could actually take actions to improve. And so, where we've seen such improvements in schedule attainment, where we've seen increases in lights out production, reductions in setup, improvements in our costings through getting this data and being able to react to it, we're seeing the savings, right? This isn't something where, hey, I spend this much money, I bring in a new machine and I'm producing more pieces. We're genuinely spending this money to show us how bad we are so we can start working on it. And that was a hard pill for me to swallow. because I like to think that we're the best in class. We still are, but we're better in class than we were. So.
Yeah, it's a tough one, I mean, I think reality is needs to be the baseline, right? And I think, when I look at discrete manufacturing in particular, it's I don't like to use the words willy-nilly, but let's just say that it's much easier to say, hey, we're going to spend a bunch of capex, right? Instead of hey, we're going to use OpEx to improve OpEx, right? And that is what annual software is, right? It is OpEx. I guess for you guys, you're looking for a company like Harvey, right? On that side of things, right? Obviously, we don't want to be wasteful on the capex side, but we know that we need to continue to improve machines, right? So that's not just going to go away, right? Investing in automation, that's not just going to go away. We're going to justify that. On the EBITDA side of things, right? Though on the OpEx side of things, I mean, how do you see the value of this technology helping you, reduce or optimize that side of the equation when it comes to people? Do you think that the software like this makes people more efficient?
I don't think individually it makes them more efficient, but it gives us visibility, right? I said earlier, it's not about Big Brother watching, but there's obviously a part of that is there. As I gave you that example earlier, that setup person wasn't performing as well as we'd like on that setup. So we're, driving that and showing those improvements. Those naturally going to show up in managing our costs of our parts better, and therefore, in our gross margin levels and things like that. We have noticed a much easier method to be able to understand our manpower for the machines by having effective schedules, by knowing what our manpower is, right? We talked about an attainable schedule's got to be put out there. And if I know that I've got 3 people on PTO, then I can adjust my schedule to whether I take machines out of service or I put long jobs on there or whatever the case. I've got a lot more capability of seeing that live to what's happening. And even to a certain extent, if somebody just calls in. So, all of these things making people more efficient, being able to use your employees more efficient. I like to say, and it's common in manufacturing, working smarter, not harder. We are working smarter. We're taking this job and looking to see what the next best job is based on what we're running and what we want to run next. So we minimize the setup. So the router might say we've got an hour setup, and now it's a 10-minute setup because all we've done is change the reach or the length or whatever it is. So it's that real time, I keep going back to it. It's that real time take action live data. And anytime you can be more efficient, drive efficiencies in your equipment and your people and your business, you're going to see that at the bottom line in what you're doing. So it's a win-win for me in that respect.
George, anything to add to that one?
Yeah, to piggyback on that one, I'll just say that the automation of the data collection as well. You're, as a manufacturer, without something like this, you are spending OpEx on your operators, on your engineers, on continuous improvement people to collect data, to do current state studies. And with MachineMetrics, you automate that and you get the ability to do it on a 24/7 basis. Which again, you're spending money, operational expense, on having your most important, your operators, people you need to be setting up the equipment and running the equipment are spending time collecting data. So with this, they don't have to do that.
It's awesome. Well, guys, we're there. We're at the top of the hour. I'm grateful for the time you guys are willing to share with the Modern Machine Shop audience. George and Duggan, you were excellent. And to the audience, we're grateful for your presence as well. Hope you find this to be a valuable webinar experience. And like I said, feel free to reach out with any questions to either the presenters or to MachineMetrics. Our contact info is on the page. And back to you, Evan.
Yeah, all right. Thank you again for speaking to everybody today. As a reminder, today's presentation has been recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing shortly after we finish up here. With that, thank you for taking the time out of your week to take a listen to us, and have a great rest of your week.